break the ice straight away, so we know who we are in this room. Who likes coffee? Perfect. Second question, who likes cocktails? Spirit, alcohol, who likes drinking? Can be even wine, it's fine. All right, that means this group in this room gonna have fun for next 43 minutes because we're gonna talk about coffee and alcohol together, okay? We're not gonna talk about them separately, we're gonna talk about them in combination. I know this is a coffee festival, I'm the kind of devil's advocate coming here and telling you, hey, there's something better than just having a cup of coffee for the morning. You can have, for example, Irish coffee, you know, a bit of whiskey, cream, you know, and why we should have it. So, past, present, the future of coffee cocktails by me. That's me. I have a similar story as Dale. I wasn't competing for so many years. I would say just 7. It took me 7 years to become world champion in coffee and good spirit, which is the fun part of the barista championship, where you make cocktails and you just make judges laugh and you make them drunk. And, you know, it's much easier than barista or latte or brewer's cup. Let's be honest. You make a boozy alcohol and coffee together. So it took me 7 years to become world champion. I was twice second in the world in Shanghai and Melbourne. Don't want to talk about my trauma. All the baristas who ever competed and lost, they had a trauma of blaming judges, sponsors, rules, and whoever else. Just know yourself. I'm always the best, right? But I've been in hospitality for the last 20 years. This is me trying to look cool as Australian. Been living in Australia for the last 6 years. Before I was in London for 4 years, same time as Dale was there and he won. My whole career is simply all about coffee and cocktails. It's not one more than another. I'm trying to be balanced and to create this combination of both worlds equally. Okay, I respect baristas, I respect bartenders, sommeliers, I'm not sure, because I don't drink wine. I don't drink wine, let's be honest. But in those last 10 years, working abroad overseas, I work in a 5-star hotels, I work in my own bars, own concepts, I had a coffee shops, restaurants, roastery. I tried pretty much everything. It's very easy to do your own concepts if it's not your own money. Okay, so if you have investors giving you money, go for it. That's what I did for the last 10 years. Some projects successfully, some not successfully. But the project I'm the proudest the most, it's the time I spent my 3 years of COVID. We don't want to talk about it, but some of you during COVID learn how to use air fryer and how to bake your own bread. Or maybe some of you, you know, start doing yoga or whatever. I spent those 2 years, 3 years writing my own book. And the result of that, of the book, is a ritual consultancy. It's me as a Martin Hudak, kind of put it in a one word. Who am I? Barista, bartender, you know, is this guy from the Savoy Hotel? Is this guy crazy from Australia? Who is this guy? I'm ritual consultancy. It's all about rituals. My whole life is a combination of small little things, which means a lot to me. And that's why ritual, and that's why the result is spiritual coffee. The ritual is very important, but of course the spirit itself is the alcohol, which, you know, it's the main reason why I'm who I am and why I'm talking to you today, and then the coffee part. Why I wrote this book during COVID, you know, I was on the sofa laying down and I was watching all these videos on YouTube of every brand ambassador, barista or bartender telling you, this is how you should make coffee, this is how you should make cocktails, this is the real story of espresso martini. And I'm like, that's not actually true. Because just because it's on a Google or on Wikipedia doesn't mean it's true. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be that guy who's going to tell the world the whole truth. And I cannot lie to myself. I cannot just create the stories. I need to really go to the libraries, to the archives, talk to the historians, and start digging into it and trying to bring the real story of, let's say, espresso martini, or the real story why alcohol in coffee works. Because most of the baristas are going to think, nah, it doesn't work. It does. Because it's older than coffee drinking. And this is the result. That book, which I'm going to dilute in next 40 minutes in hopefully very entertaining presentation. There's lots of history, guys, lots of numbers, lots of slides. Take a pictures. Don't try to remember it, okay? Even I don't remember what I wrote. All right, I wouldn't laugh. That's sad. Okay, I'm on the mission to take the craft coffee into the night. As I said, I'm a bartender and barista as well, but last 6 years, mostly bar world. And when I go to the cocktail bar and I order espresso martini and ask the bartender, hey, where's the coffee coming from? A coffee machine. Oh, wow, okay, good. What about vodka? Oh, yeah, we have this, you know, sustainable organic vodka from Iceland called this and that. We have this local vodka through the charcoal, you know, we do our homemade syrups. And look at my shaker, look at my shake. You know, we have Japanese bar too. Look at this ice program. Okay, but what about your coffee? We don't give a shit, right? Because we are bartenders. We don't care about coffee. And same for baristas. Hey, are there any baristas in this room? Yeah, few. Oh, okay, only one. I'm not gonna offend you, but you know, you go to the coffee shops and then you wanna, I don't know, maybe have a conversation with your barista or ask where is the bathroom or what kind of cake you have in offer, or maybe just have a barista looking into your eyes rather than measuring TDS or freshly brewed fermented geisha and doing some latte art for 5 minutes because I'm counting how many vortex I'm gonna put inside so I can post it on Instagram, and then oh, there is a guest in front of me. I just forgot about it. You know, in both worlds we're missing something, you know, and we should learn from each other, bartenders from baristas and vice versa. So I'm on the mission to kind of openly talk about those problems we have in our industry. We have a coffee people, cocktail people, sommeliers, you know, chefs. Everybody's so separated, and I don't like it. We should work together, because at the end of the day, what matters is the happy guest. It doesn't matter if it's gonna have espresso today morning and tomorrow a cocktail and day after some burger. In the end of the day, it's the guest what we're trying to make sure they are happy. Coffee change, cocktail change, you know, we have amazing bars around the world. I don't know if you are from here. It's my second time in Slovenia. I was last time here 18 years ago when I was still studying, and I was competing in a competition of a junior bartenders. It was in a little town called Bled. And I was there competing, sponsored by Coca-Cola. And I had to do cocktails with Coca-Cola. I was probably 15 years old. And I won, you know. But since then, many things changed, you know, many things in a coffee and cocktail world. But if you look at the combination of both, coffee cocktails, that didn't change. We always drink the same espresso martini everywhere we go. We always drink the same, let's say maybe white Russian or Irish coffee, because that's what we know. We always go to the bars and ask for the safe options. Now we go to coffee shops and we drink a nitro coffee. Wow, you know, cold brew coffee. Wow, you know, like it's so new. Actually, it's not. You know, it's 300, 400 years old, you know. But about that later. So I think because the coffee is booming and it's getting better and we're focusing on terroir, origin, and quality, I think we should take that in our bars, coffee shops, homes, restaurants, and kind of utilize that. I have a little timeline for you to understand evolvement. All of you are very young people. I don't think someone here is older than 1990. Okay, I'm 1990. But what I remember from my childhood and early ages, I'm just trying to give you compliments. Remember, I'm bartender, so what I want is your tips. So in 1990, when I was born, it was the era of Nescafe. I don't know about Slovenian coffee scene. Maybe you have equivalent of Nescafe, or I don't know how you call it. Nescafe is everywhere. Woo! Yeah, good business. Edusho, whatever it's called, these brands. Instant coffee, you know. And we are surprised we are so in love with instant coffee, but obviously economical situation back in time, you know, political involvements and all of that, make sure that we don't have a good coffee here in Central Europe. So we were drinking a instant coffee. That's what I was drinking. My favorite was 3-in-1, little sachet with powdered milk and sugar. You just open it, hot water. Wow, amazing coffee, right? Straight to the bathroom. What happened that time in the bars, we saw the bars using a post mix. It's like this, you know, like a hose with a gun, and you have like 8 buttons, and you can choose Coca-Cola, Sprite. Of course, it's just high fructose corn sugar syrup with water, carbonated, and you just, that's your gin and tonic. You with a very shitty, horrible tonic water. Or that's your Cuba Libre with Coca-Cola. It took 3 seconds to do it, and that was time of the 90s, you know. Woo, cocktails, amazing. We moved to 2005, so some of you, maybe you start going to the bars and coffee shop and wondering like, oh my God, okay, why this coffee shop is better? Why this coffee tastes better? Because, you know, they're using something, what is called the specialty coffee, you know, third grade coffee, whatever. American roasteries, little micro roasteries. In the bars, we start seeing espresso martinis. Wow. Especially in Australia in 2005, suddenly espresso martini became #1 best-selling cocktail, and no one knew how that happened and why. Obviously, it happened because in Australia in that time, one of the first coffee roasteries being established, you know, we can talk about, I don't know, San Eli, Toby's Estate, etc., Ona. And because of those coffee movements, you know, cocktail movements become better. And in the end, we see in 2015, when I moved to London, 2014, we see that suddenly, you know, bartenders, baristas talking about origin, terroir, and they start making cocktails which maybe just look like glass of water, and it's very, very minimalistic with no bullshit garnish like banana dolphins and umbrellas and smokes and whatever. They just look simple, but when you taste it, you are like, whoa, what is this? This is interesting. And then you have this bartender or barista telling you, actually, this is a coffee cocktail, but it's clarified. As a milk punch, we're using a protein from the milk to remove the color, but give it nice viscosity. And it's simple because of this and that. And that's happening, and that's the trend. Less is more, but focus on quality first. And in this case, it's coffee. All right. Now I'm going to be a historian. I'm not that old to be a historian, but I love history. In the classes at school, I really loved it all the time, and I like to talk about the past, and I try to remember as many informations, just in case I have a guest in the bar asking like, oh, where is old-fashioned cocktail from? And who created Negroni and why? And I should kind of know it, you know. And if someone asks you, oh, what was the first roastery in Ljubljana? And I say, Stowe, right? Because they're paying for me to be here today. Is anyone here from Stowe? No, okay. Yeah, no? All right, guys, so let's talk about history. This is very important, okay? What I'm going to show you now, it might shock you. I was shocked as well. What I'm going to show you now in the first slides, you might find in the books of other people, okay? People who are going to see them in the festival, very famous people. I'm not going to name them. They wrote many books as well, and they are way more richer than me, James Hoffman. You know, but there are some stories out there on the internet, you know, as a young bartender, barista, or a home barista, whatever, wannabe Tom Cruise cocktail maker, you write history of coffee, origin of coffee, you know, and Google and Wikipedia, and everybody gives you the same story. In the 13th, 14th century, somewhere in Africa, there was the farmer. His name was Kaldi, a goat herder. He has goats, okay? Now imagine you are my goats. Don't move, don't make any sound. Perfect. That happens all the time. But imagine you are goats. Goats is very primitive animal, right? They have two purposes, eat and shit. Now, if you are a goat and you are hungry, you see the tree, you don't think what kind of tree it is, so you're gonna eat it. Okay? And they saw this tree for the first time. These goats never thought about what it is, and they start eating it. And apparently that tree they were eating was a coffee tree. What happened? They got caffeinated, they got high. And they start jumping around like crazy goats, and the farmer was looking at them and he was like, what the hell? What kind of drug is that? So he started eating those cherries and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm in love with this. I discovered the coffee. Now that's the romantic story, which unfortunately is not true. There might be some goat herder, there must be some guy with the goats and animals. It might happen. But in reality, what we know, even a century earlier, there were nomadic tribes who were going from, you know, Middle Eastern part to Africa on these long caravanas with their camels and horses and whatnot, and then try to survive those long journeys, and they need energy. So what they were consuming on those long journeys, it's something what I call a modern power bowl. When you go to the fancy coffee shop today, let's say Stowe, okay, you go there, you have a hipster barista there, mustache, tattoos, whatever, okay, and he's giving you coffee, and on the counter then in a nice glass jar you have those little rounded bowls made out of organic, paleo, vegan, keto, gluten-free ingredients such as cacao nibs. You know, you have a coconut, you have some special coconut butter and protein, and you buy this stupid little bowl for €5, okay, and then you eat it and you feel like, oh wow, I'm so healthy and strong and I have so much energy. Well, that what happened, guys, in 12th century. Those nomadic tribes were taking animal fat, okay, from goats and camels, okay, or sheep. They take the animal fat and they stuff the green coffee beans inside, and they were eating it like a power bowl, okay. You know, fat, protein, caffeine, keep them awake. And that's how coffee started moving, went to the cities such as Constantinople, Cairo, Mecca, and all these Arabic people, because they were so intelligent, these people also discovered distillation. They discover how to distill alcohol. Of course, they are the people behind mathematics and astrology. These people start opening coffee shops and roasteries, and then coffee came to Europe. Do we have any Italians in the room? Oh, thanks God. Mamma mia. I would be burned alive if I would say what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. If you go to Italy today, proud Italians going to say, coffee came to Italy for the first time. Came to Venice, no, Cafe Florian. Coffee came to Genoa. We were the first in Europe. Well, that's not true. Coffee came to the Europe for the first time to the country called Malta. which is the southern part, kind of Italy slash Arabia slash Africa slash other part of the world. It's a melting pot of cultures. What happened? These Arabic people were traveling with their homemade baristas, aka slaves. They brought them with them to the new countries where they tried to trade ingredients, okay? And they brought those homemade baristas, slaves, to make the coffees. Italians were like, who are you? What are you doing? What's that? The taste is like, oh my God, what is this? They call it the wine of Arabian wine, because they didn't know it's coffee, they didn't know how to call it. Then, of course, from Italy, coffee spread it to France, England, Netherlands. Basically, all biggest nations who could come, go, conquer the world, kill the people, slave them, etc. Well, it's a dark past, but this dark past create a coffee culture we have here, a rum culture, cigar culture, whatever you want to talk about it. But I want to stick with France. I don't want to talk about Italians anymore, because yes, they have the best espresso in the world. But what I want to talk about France is the French people were the first people who actually start thinking, okay, today in my shop, I'm not only selling candies and licorice and nutmeg and spices and teas, I'm going to sell coffee and alcohol. They were the first people. And what I discovered that in 1673, they create something what is called the Limonadier Guild. Let's call it a modern bartender association, or, you know, the coffee association. And these guys were basically the official bartenders, baristas, who officially knew a lot about alcohol and coffee and can officially sell it in the coffee shops. What happened? They had a big problem with a pharmacist. Back in that time, if you want to get a sip of alcohol or a coffee, you go to the pharmacist, you get a prescription, it's good for your stomach, hair, whatever. And they had a massive fight. And it was such a huge fight that French government had to kind of make decision if really only pharmacists could sell alcohol, coffee, or it could be actually normal people, bar owners and baristas. In the end, they got a license. They could sell the alcohol in the coffee shops in France. For the first time in the history, those two ingredients starting combining in one place. But I want to mention a guy called Jacques-Francois de Magie. He's a pharmacist. He was really against those brutal baristas, bartenders who were selling whatever they want without any knowledge how it could affect your body. This pharmacist wrote the recipe for a first coffee liqueur ever written in the history. We're talking about 1775. This is like 100 years before like one of the first cocktails or cocktail book was written. And he wrote very nice recipe. What I like about the fact that this pharmacist in France, he said specifically, when you roast the coffee, make sure you don't burn it. Hello, dark roast. Where we did mistake. Even the pharmacists back then knew that the carcinogen is not good for your stomach, and you might have a big problems. If you kind of transfer this recipe in a modern recipe, it's pretty good coffee liqueur. Highly recommend. Talking about the bartenders, I'm moving 100 years forward because my background is the cocktails and the bars, and I'm not a pharmacist at all. And I don't want to talk on behalf of them. But 100 years after, one of the first cocktail maker or most famous bartender in the world, Jerry Thomas from America, he was so famous, he was earning more money than Vice President of the United States back then. He worked in one of the most famous places, and he wrote this book, which is a Bible. Like today, James Hoffman book is a Bible for baristas. Hopefully this one after seminar, right? This guy wrote a cocktail book, Bartender's Guide, in 1862. Today, every bartender at home, every geek bartender has the book at home and go through the recipes and be like, what's the original martini recipe? How to make mojito? Well, me and wasn't back then, but like, okay, I'm gonna dig into it and I'm gonna try to remake it. And then you get frustrated because you don't understand measurements, a cup, a gill, whatever fuck measurements are there. You close the book and you forget about it. Well, I was the same 10, 15 years ago when I started in London and I wanted to be a classic bartender and knew those recipes. But I went to the end of the book, and in the end of the book, I found homemade ingredients, how to make homemade syrups and infusions. And I found in that book a recipe for a coffee liqueur for the first time in history by professional bartender, not a pharmacist. I have a better picture for you. This is kind of our ratio, which you could do in European standards of liters and kilos. And if you make something like that, something what he created, more than 150 years ago, you would get probably one of the modern coffee liqueurs. I'm not gonna name, but it could be, anything between Mr. Black, Kahlua, Tia Maria, whatever, which is not that bad considering how old is the recipe. When I was thinking about the bartenders back in time and the bars, like how come we have a coffee liqueurs but we don't have a coffee cocktails? And it took such a long time for me to discover first ever written recipe of the coffee cocktails in the books. And it wasn't the book of a pharmacist or bartender, it was the book of a poet. In those books, I found a very specific word, Gloria. Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. And every time I'm thinking, who the hell is Gloria? Like, who is that girl? Like, why someone would name a coffee cocktail called Gloria? And then basically, I came up to the conclusion that Gloria, it's not the name of the person, it's the name of the Holy Spirit, Father and Son. It's a Trinity, right? It's a triangle. And Gloria basically is a combination of 3 ingredients. And that's what I discovered in the poem by Mr. Blandieu. French poem. He was writing poems about tobacco, poems about alcohol, poems about coffee. And one of his poems he wrote that if you take a little spoon, okay, and you put the sugar on that spoon, and then you put the brandy of alcohol, then you burn it, then you drop it in your coffee and you stir it, you create something what French people call Gloria coffee. Coffee should come from Bourbon or Martinique, da-da-dee, da-da-da. And I found these beautiful spoons online. I'm going to give it to you. You can have it look. Please don't lose it. This is like 120 years old. I already lost a few of them last month in Poland. I don't want to point the fingers, but... So this is one of the first coffee cocktail tool for making one of the first coffee cocktails called Cafe Gloria, which was written in England by William Terrington. Like Jerry Thomas in America wrote the coffee liqueur recipe, this guy in England, William Terrington, pretty much same time, wrote the recipe for Cafe Gloria. Equal parts of strong, bright coffee. No dark, no burnt, no heavy, bright. Cognac and sugar. Some of the bartenders, like a geeky bartenders, could say, this is not a cocktail. You don't have a modifier, you're missing bitters, you're missing this. Well, if you think about old-fashioned cocktail, very classic. Whiskey, sugar, and bitters. We have a cognac instead of whiskey, we have a sugar, and instead of bitters, we have a coffee, which could be a bitter aging. So Cafe Gloria, our first coffee cocktail, a hot drink. I'm gonna serve it right after seminar in my stand. Please, not all at the same time. We have enough for everybody. And it's, kind of recipe you can do at home. I have it in ounces and mLs, something like that. All right, depending on the sugar, how strong is the sugar, how sweet it is. But it's a very simple recipe. It's a hot coffee with booze. That's it. Sugar to taste. But it's amazing to realize that in those French cafes, there were people literally with those spoons waiting, burning with the cognac and sugar and throwing inside and flames. Everyone like, wow, in the time of Van Gogh and Hemingway and all of that. Beautiful. But I want to move from France. I want to move from France to Germany, northern part of Germany. And it's like Northern Frisia. That's how it's called. It's very hostile and not pleasure place to live. There are many peninsulas and little islands on the left-hand side. I never been there. I just heard it's miserable. It's cold and rainy. And all those little islands, there are little towns and little villages. And what I want to talk about Germany in terms of coffee cocktails is something what surprised me the most. The Germany back then was so famous for making their own rum. And I'm like, what the hell? Germany and rum? Maybe beer, but not rum or schnapps. And what surprised me the most is that our second coffee cocktail in the history class we're having today for next 10 minutes is based on rum, not the cognac. All right, so we're moving from France, we're going to Germany. Germans back then were trading lots of rum from Caribbean parts, Jamaica, etc. They brought this rum to their country, and they blended with the cheap corn or wheat produced spirit. Okay, they cut it, and they bottle it. It's called the rum Verschnitt. It's like a blended rum. Today, well, back then there were more than 30, 40 distilleries. Now there are only 1 or 2. Okay, it's very low, cheap, blended spice rum, mostly with a high amount of a cheap spirit and bit of rum. But anyway, because of that specific part of those islands and ports in northern Germany was heavily influenced by rum, piracy, navy, which basically leads us to the one thing, alcoholism. Everybody was wasted. You're living in the country you hate, it's cold, it's rainy, you are a pirate, you're waiting at home for your husband who is on the road for 2 years, God knows where, he's coming home drunk. So, of course, the local priest was like, no one's going to drink anymore. Okay, everybody calm down. we gonna have a little bit of prohibition, no alcohol allowed, which wasn't nice for local people who try to take every opportunity to drink. One of the opportunity was when the new child was born to the family and was about to be baptized. When you baptize a child, this poor little baby doesn't know what's going on. Everybody get wasted. We have a new child, and that's what happened. But to be able to not to show the priest they were drinking during celebration, they create a drink where they combine a coffee with a dark rum, bit of sugar, and they put the cream on top. The cream, because if you put the hot rum and hot coffee together, you smell straight away the strong alcoholic flavors in your nose. So they told the servant in the house, put the cream, cover it up. No one needs to know. And they start drinking. Of course, the priest has a non-alcoholic version, okay? And then suddenly somehow made a little fuck up in the kitchen, and he got alcoholic version. He took a sip, and he stood up and he said, "Oi, Pharisees!" I don't speak German, but something like that, like, "You Pharisees, you people without religion, you people without a soul and God in your heart, how you could treat me like that, how you could lie." And that's how the Pharisees coffee was born, and still is today served in that part of the world. If you look at the recipe, maybe different glass, different name, this is our grandfather of Irish coffee. Irish coffee was born about 70, 80 years afterwards that, okay, in Ireland. And everybody talking about Irish coffee, everybody going crazy for Irish coffee. But no one really knows this drink based on rum, which is interesting. Talking about the Germany and talking about, the pirates and navy and all of that. Of course, in the history, as I mentioned, history was very much affected by wars. Especially during Civil War in America in the 1860s, you might expect that the soldiers were writing letters back home and crying, "Oh, I miss you, my love, I miss my kids," whatever. The most used words in those letters from soldiers was word coffee. Send us more coffee. If you don't give a soldier coffee, he won't fight. That's it, okay? The coffee was this kind of thing which makes them, get up every day and fight. And they had something what is called the coffee call. So every day there was a guy with a bell. They got to the campfire, and there was a big pot with the hot coffee, and they were sharing it, those moments of drinking this miserable, dirty coffee made out of Mississippi rivers. And it wasn't even coffee, because how you can get a good coffee back then? They were basically toasting pits from olives or dates. They were sometimes even taking a breadcrumbs, which had charcoaled so hard and so dark that it kind of could mimic the flavor of the coffee. But back then, American bartender Harry Johnson, who was one of the first bartenders in New York who wrote a manual how to become a businessman. I recommend this book. He wrote a recipe for soldier's camping punch. This is like for 100 people, guys, okay? Don't try to make this, like divided maybe by a lot portions, unless you are Polish, Slovakian, or maybe Slovenian, you could handle it. But it's basically a hot punch, similar to Gloria, or similar to Pariser without cream, and a combination of brandy and a rum all together. Amazing. Hot coffee with lots of booze and sugar. As a soldier, you must be very happy about it. What I didn't like until that point in the history, okay, and it's not a long time ago, it's 140, 150 years ago, is what I didn't like is, where the hell is ice? Where is the ice in the cocktails, like coffee cocktails? Like, why there is no ice? Today you go to coffee shops and you get perfectly made cold brew or whatever on ice, or your matcha latte on ice. Back then there was no ice. Until the guy called William Schmidt, again, Prussian descendant, moved to America. Everybody was running away to America back then to make money. And he came up with this, with the drink. Of course, he mentioned Gloria in his book, again, exactly how it should be done. He saw it, how French people doing in Europe. The French really love it. That's how we're going to do it. But I don't want to talk about Gloria because back then it was already mentioned so many times. But he made the drink, first ever, coffee cocktail with ice. And not only that, he made a coffee cocktail which includes ice cream. I wish to have more Italians in the room. There is none, but affogato. Ice cream and coffee, right? Boozy affogato, bit of sambuca, amaretto. You make it alcoholic. Well, this guy, more than 100-something years ago, he combined, well-known ingredients such as rum and brandy. And then he said a cold infused coffee or cold brew coffee, sugar, and you put some ice cream. This is his version, which I'm having in my book as well, but I have some twist on it. You can play with different ice creams. Think about pistachio, maybe, pistachio. You can play with ingredients such as syrups and coffee, can be different. So very nice, easy, enjoyable highball to make at home or in a bar. Are you with me? Won't be too long, huh? We are just in 1800s, so we still have 100 years to cover. Oh, that's the pirate. I'm gonna skip that guy because yeah, he's just like so much storytelling around him, and nothing is really sure what happened, what didn't happen. But I want to just do a little like conclusion about the pirates and drinking. It's very well known in history that the pirates and navy people were drinking a lot, whereas was a cognac or then later gin in the British Navy. What was well known as well, they didn't trust their commanders, and they were like, it's definitely cut with water. It's definitely 100% beautiful rum you're gonna give me, or cognac or gin. So they tried to test those spirits they were giving them for impurities. So they light it up on fire, okay, just to make sure it's burning. If your alcohol is burning, it's strong. When they do that, or that flaming, it's called brûlé. Brûlé, okay? That word is very important because I'm gonna mention it very soon. You might hear about brûlé, crème brûlée, anything with the fire, it's brûlé, okay? As well, it's one of the tactics of the pirates. Burn the ship, set up on fire, and throw it to another ship, and then they explode, and then I don't have a ship, but hey, they're dead. I want you to remember the word fire, coffee, and brûlé, and French people. We're gonna get to that in a second. When the devil met coffee. New Orleans, I'm going to New Orleans pretty much every year for past years, and you go there and just incredible city, not just because of the jazz music, but as well it's a birthplace of most of the classic cocktails, okay? Ramoshin Feast, French 75, Eucaré, etc., Boulevardier, you name it. That place is absolutely stunning in terms of restaurants and coffee dining scenes, and there was this guy, Jules Alcator, who opened many restaurants. He became so famous. He created so many dishes who are still famous until nowadays. Oysters Rockefeller. It's oysters which is baked. He was super famous, but as well he was famous because on his opening list of the restaurant, okay, about more than 100 years ago, he put on the menu Café Brûlot Diabolique. So I'm thinking, okay, we know word café, it's coffee, brûlot, it's fiery, and then diabolique, like, why call his drink a devilicious coffee? Why it's devil coffee? If you today serve someone devil coffee, I'm not sure people would buy it, but you can try in your coffee shop. And I was thinking, okay, what devilicious means according to the Oxford English Dictionary? It's basically a food or a drink which is highly seasoned, fried, or boiled. So everything on fire back then was called a diabolique, devilique, devilicious, devils. Okay, so today you make coffee on fire. I'm gonna call it Devil's Ljubljana Coffee. Woo! Okay, nothing new back then. And the Café Brûlot Diabolique, it's something what they still serve today in New Orleans in those huge, beautiful bowls. It's kind of ceremonial serve when they turn off the lights and they put a coffee in a bowl with lots of spices. They take the orange with a peel and spices and they put cognac, flame it. Don't do it at home, I almost burned the house. Okay, but they have these beautiful cups. This is, again, original from New Orleans. Don't lose it. Thank you. There is a picture of the Faust from the Goethe book, the person who sold his soul to the devils, da-da-da. Beautiful drink, hot, beautiful. If you do this in a bar, restaurant, at home, 100% you're gonna get like, I don't know, at least 50 reels and videos out of it and likes and shares on Instagram. No one's gonna drink it, but that's why we do this, no? Fire show. Okay, we are almost here. Coffee goes sticky, 1940s, 1950s, 30s, America. I don't want to go into the details. You can find more in my book. All right? But why this is important? In 2014, when I started working in the Savoy in London, it's not about naming the hotel. It's a hotel in general in London. You have the best hotel rooms, best cocktails, best food. In the end of all your experience, you have a coffee tastes like shit because you signed a contract with the, I'm not going to name again, maybe Lavazza, Ili Musetti, whatever, Kimbo. Because they give you a free coffee machine for every single hotel room. And for a banquet room, you know, that's why you do it. And your coffee costs like nothing, but unfortunately it tastes like shit. And I was so frustrated working the most famous 5-star hotel bar in the world, the place where the classic cocktails were born, and my coffee tastes like shit. Every time before the shift, we prepare a full bottle of espressos, which we use then for espresso martinis. And if you want to make espresso martini with a stale coffee which was done probably a few hours before your shift, you're not going to get the foam. Even if you have a big hands and you shake hard and use the best technique. So I was very frustrated about that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to change that. I need to make foamy espresso martini, but I'm not going to use egg white. Of course, it will be a bit weird, egg and coffee. although I saw it a few times. Then I was thinking, how can I make my espresso martini foamier? I'm going to use pineapple juice. And here is the thing. I thought I'm rediscovering something. Wow, I'm putting pineapple juice and coffee together and rum. I'm creating a, modern cocktail. Well, back then in 1930s, there were so many coffee cocktails on the menu already, like a coffee grog and PT punch, etc., by people like this Mariano Lucidne, a Polynesian guy who came to America, 16 years working as a barber, somewhere in the kitchen, stealing all the recipes from his teachers and then taking them and reinventing them. And this guy became so famous for combining coffee, of course, coffee from Hawaii, Kona coffee, because back then it was still real coffee. And he created this combination of tropical flavors and coffee together. So for me, I was like, oh my God, I created a modern coffee cocktail. I'm going to call it Espresso Martiki. Tiki, like a tropical drinks. But very simple. Instead of vodka, which is boring, sometimes I use the rum. Back then on the market came rum from company called Plantation in France. They infused it with pineapples. I was like, that's amazing. I'm not going to use sugar. Sugar is just sweet, plain. I'm going to use almond syrup or orgeat. Okay, I have a nuttiness. I'm going to put pineapple juice, coffee liqueur, good one, good espresso, trying. I made this recipe back then in London. I gave it to my colleague, Mario Vinciguerra from Naples in Italy. And he was like, cazzo, I'm going to shit myself, huh? Pineapple and coffee, you crazy, huh? Well, he didn't, and he liked it. And since then, it's been almost 10 years I'm doing this coffee everywhere I go around the world. And even after this seminar, I'm going to do it for you at the stand. It won't be looking as beautiful as this, but it's tasting portions. And what I like about this drink, it's versatile, it's approachable. You can make it wherever you want to go around the world. All these ingredients are available. And it's better than espresso martini. I would just say it's more funnier, funkier. Irish coffee. Everybody gonna talk, and what you're gonna find on the social media, on Instagram, on Google, you're gonna find the story of the chef, Joe Sheridan, who met the journalist, Stanton Delaplane from San Francisco at the airport, Shannon, in Ireland. Emergency plane, landed, lots of American tourists, cold and miserable. He mixed them hot coffee with whiskey, sugar, and cream, like coffee for Isis, but with whiskey. Some American lady drank it and said, excuse me, is that a Brazilian coffee? No, that's Irish coffee, because I'm using Irish whiskey. Now, that's a romantic story you're going to read. And this guy brought the recipe as a journalist, blogger. He wrote it. They became friends. And he brought this recipe to America, to Buena Vista in San Francisco. And San Francisco, Buena Vista going to claim, we are the birthplace of Irish coffee in America. It's 100th, whatever, anniversary. And that's actually not true. Joe was studying hospitality or bartending skills in Dublin, in a Dolphin Hotel, still there. You should go, with a guy called Mike Nugent. He used to drink during the shift coffee spiked with whiskey and cream and sugar to look like it's latte or cappuccino, whatever, so they don't see he's drinking, okay? He saw it. He just make it perfect with that layer on top you see now in a competition with barista shakings and putting on top. Okay, he saw it. He brought it to the airport. The journalist brought it to America, but it wasn't him. Behind the success of Irish coffee in America are basically two ladies. First of them is a blogger, fashion blogger, I would say modern influencer. She would have Instagram today. Many, many years before Stanton Delaplane, he was at the same airport and he said, I was told I would make a great mistake if I wouldn't order Irish coffee, blah, 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 blah. He loved it. He wrote this in an article in America. American people kind of like, oh, right, Ireland, Irish coffee. And at the same time, way before Buena Vista in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, in the Oakland airport, small airport, there was a young lady, a bartender from Ireland, okay, Patricia Regan, working there. She got now here an official certificate as ambassador for Ireland. And at that airport, at the age of 19, she was already making Irish coffees for American passengers. How she knew that recipe? Well, her brother is the guy who hired Joe Sheridan at the airport. Her brother, Mr. O'Regan, is the guy who created the first duty-free shop in the world at Shannon Airport. So, of course, it was like, hey, here in Ireland, we're doing Irish coffee. It's amazing. Take it to America. You're going to be famous, successful. Of course, she wasn't. Back then, female bartender didn't work, unfortunately. But she was the first person, and I really want to talk about her. Sheridan said, yeah, Americans, they call it, Gaelic coffee, whatever, Irish coffee, but, it's Irish drink. It was created by Irishmen. I served in Ireland, that's it. But he claims that he created because of his hangover. In the end, he became abstinent. He was doing a little bit of tour in America like a celebrity. And since then, you know, we can see Irish coffee ever pretty much around the world in good bars and coffee shops. It's popping up. This is my version of cold Irish coffee. Of course, in Australia 6 years ago when I went there, I made Irish coffee for my partners, Italians, and they said, "Are you crazy? Hot Irish coffee? It's 38 degrees outside." I said, "Oh yeah, that's true. It wouldn't work, hot Irish coffee." We made a cold one, and it worked. We were selling a lot. Highly recommend. Easy to make. You can pre-batch your whiskey with sugars, then just do cold brew, cream, 1 minute, drink is done. And the birth of modern classic, and we're gonna finish this session with the most famous drink and most famous models, espresso martini. Why I'm showing you Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss? Again, same thing on a Google. 2 models or 1 model walked to the bar in 1983 in a Soho area in London, met the bartender and tell the bartender, "Hey, give me something to wake me up and fuck me up." Excuse my French, but that's what she said, apparently, which is just marketing, of course. There maybe was some famous model, maybe from Slovenia or whatever. But, you know, it wasn't none of those 2 they're claiming, because Naomi Campbell would be 14 and Kate was 9 at that time. The bartender was Dick Bratzel, very famous bartender, created many, many drinks. But what I like about the story about this espresso martini is there were so many Italians, so many coffee machines. He hated it so much. He always see it every day next to him. He kind of blended together with vodka, shook it up, and gave it to one of his colleagues, Sophie Parking from Zanzibar in Covent Garden. And she was doing so many double shifts. She was so tired. He gave it to her to wake her up. Red Bull didn't exist back then. So the model story is good, but in reality, he just tried to cheer up his colleague. My version is back to the roots. You can try it over there with the beetroot. I'm Slovakian, not Slovenian, very similar, don't get confused. But same as Slovenia, you like beetroot, I guess. So I made a version with beetroot, roots, back to the roots, vodka, very easy. And with that, I just want to tell you that the future of coffee cocktail depends on what you do today. Just the fact you're sitting here and spending 45 minutes, maybe you're creating better future for you, for your colleagues, for your guests, for your family, doing better coffee cocktails. And it's very simple. You have to understand coffee is the fruit, which you do, because you're all baristas and coffee nerds. You need to know the origin, have to understand the flavors of the coffee, which you then utilized, and in the end have a respect. Just because a bottle of single malt whiskey costs £150 doesn't mean that you're not gonna look after your espresso, which costs £1. It's very thin line. And then you can create a modern coffee cocktails, which there are more than 40 recipes in this book. There are more than 300, 200 pages of the history of every single drink. And if you want to learn more, please meet me at the stand. Only today, I'm gonna selling my signature for €40 and book for free. Thank you very much. I don't think we have a time for questions because he's looking at me 5 minutes. We have a time for questions. Guys, you can ask me anything. Shoe size, how much they pay me to be here, what's my favorite cocktail, where I'm drinking, whatever you want to ask. Don't be shy. Perfect, no question.